Welcome to Spaghetti Launchers, a world building podcast. We throw spaghetti at the wall, and it's up to you. What sticks? I'm Kyle.
I'm Ethan. Today's menu is all about ranks and titles. Very appropriately, considering we always use the metaphor of Italian food. You've got primi piatti, secondi piatti. You know, there's a rank ordering to this. It's very appropriate.
Is that rank or numeral?
What's the difference?
Good question. Titles are standard in everything. You know, we have hierarchies all over the place. In the real world, we have titles and ranks.
In the military, government, church, religion, corporations. How many senior executive? It's not enough to have senior vice presidents. Now there are senior executive vice presidents.
Oh, if you look at like modern workplaces, the titles are. Title inflation is so real and so insane.
Ridiculous.
And pretty comical.
When I first told you what my title was, you burst out laughing.
They're everywhere. In fantasy, in fiction, they are also everywhere. And they're often more flowery and over the top and
just way overdone. Sometimes similar to a corporate world to the point of being comical.
And sometimes it
because
works.
They're impractical.
They're impractical. Sometimes it really fucking works.
Yeah.
And sometimes it really feels like, all right, that may have been overstepping it. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, like Daenerys Targaryen.
Daenerys Targaryen is pretty fantastic. What we're going to do, we're actually going to go through and just to elucidate the distinguishing point between monikers, nicknames, and titles.
Because those are two different things.
People use them interchangeably. They're not. So we're going to start off with Daenerys Stormborn. Stormborn is a moniker. She was born in a storm. Of House Targaryen. That's a title. She is from House Targaryen. That is, her name is also her role in that house. The first of her name, nickname. The Unburnt, nickname. Queen of Meereen, title. Very important title. Queen of the Andals and the Rhoynar and the First Men.
Title.
Khaleesi of the Great Grass Sea.
Title.
Breaker of Chains.
Moniker,
exactly. Mother of Dragons. I think title.
I think it's both.
It's both.
It's either.
It's
Schrodinger's word.
It's Schrodinger's title. Protector of the Seven Kingdoms is title.
Yeah. Well, also maybe a moniker. It depends.
But that's also her role as the queen, right? So,
but then queen is the title, so it's like.
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
that's why.
There's a blurry line a lot of times where it's like you need to know, like, is there a person who would take up the role as? In this case, yeah, that's the title because I think the next person who is going to be queen or king would take the title protector of the Seven Kingdoms, or protector of the realm, what have you. And it's like if it's a moniker, it dies with you.
Correct.
If it's
to you as an individual.
If it's a title, someone else will take that at some point.
Right.
Probably soon, but it doesn't have to be soon because you can have it because you can have there's like sometimes where it's like, oh, this title exists, but it's only given at points where someone is deserving of it, so it won't always be one. Similar to like the Dalai Lama is like, like in that kind of way, but where there's a break where, we haven't had this title. We haven't had an inquisitor exist for 100 years. We haven't had an inquisition in 100 years.
Right.
It is a title that's passed on to another person and they might know who the last one was, but they're not consecutive.
Before we do that, let me just finish up really quickly. We've got Princess of Dragonstone title. And then finally, the last one is rightful heir to the Iron Throne, which is really neither. It's just a giant fuck you to everybody else in the show.
Yeah, that's just being petty.
Which is, I'm here for it. I'm here for petty titles. I think that's really fun.
George R. R. Martin's a fucking incredible world builder, but he has great titles.
Oh, he does. And monikers, too, for that matter.
I think Lord Commander of the Night's Watch is a great title because it's simple, but also evocative of this is a military order at the the Night's Watch is like,
it just sounds cool.
It sounds cool. Like that works. The first sort of Bravos fits with Bravos. It's like this flowery, flavorful place that it has personality and sparkle.
Well, and it reminds you also of like first chair, first violin in an orchestra. And it says much more about, like you said, the difference between these societies.
Yeah, it's interesting. I forgot orchestras have titles too.
Yeah, I forgot until just now.
I was first chair trumpet in 6th grade band, except I was in the second band. So technically, I was like 20.
First chair, second band.
Yeah, I was the first. I was literally the halfway point of the band.
Yeah,
in trumpet. But
I dig it.
First of second band.
I dig it.
one of my favorite things I think about titles is on the West Wing, President Bartlett is talking to Will, whose dad is the head of NATO, and he says, Will's dad is the only person in the world who has a more cool title than me: Supreme Commander, Allied Forces, Europe. And I was like, that is a good fuck.
It's a great
Supreme
title.
Commander is a cool title, especially because we know that it like the real world implications of that.
Right.
It's how do you back up the title with something that is practical, makes sense. Like in military, it usually is easier to be like, that's grounded in some, because like a war happened.
Right.
And like you led that war. If you have that title and you haven't earned it, it usually sounds fucking insane.
Right. It sounds crazy, especially if it's a title that you've given to yourself, like a dictator would, where you're like
Colonel Gaddafi.
Where you're just like, that's not a thing. Also,
Okay.
Why Colonel? Why are we settling for Colonel? Why not
really
High General?
That is one of the greatest things of all time, is that Muammar Gaddafi was like, oh, I'm in charge of everything. I'll be a colonel. Bro, there's like 5 ranks higher than you. What is wrong with you?
There's a lot of questions to ask about Gaddafi. But similarly, it's why Darth Vader's title in Star Wars, he is the Supreme Commander of the Imperial Fleet.
It's a good title.
It's a great title.
Yeah, because
Arguably more terrifying than Dark Lord of the Sith, which is interesting. And we're coming back to the rule of 2, because the rule of 2 is
it's always good.
fucking fascinating. And there are a lot of implications. Both of them are Dark Lord of the Sith. They're equal in title.
Yeah.
Even though there is a...
Within the Sith order.
Within the Sith
Not
order.
within the Empire, which is different.
No, but within the Sith order, they have the same title, even though Sidious is the master
And the apprentice.
and Vader is the apprentice, but they share the same title.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And that's interesting, but also I think it was like my title at my work is shared by people who are at the same grade as me and lower than me.
Yeah.
And me.
Right.
We all have the same title, so it's like from the outside you have no idea whose rank is what.
Right.
And that isn't that uncommon, but you usually don't see that with a leadership position.
Right.
Unless you're my idea today.
Well, in that case, why don't we just kick it on over to
Noodle description?
to your idea? Yeah.
I'm not sure you guys know what that word means.
Yeah. Do we keep on using it though?
What's yours?
You know it when you hear it.
All right, pornography.
Indeed.
Got it.
Audio pornography specifically.
Jesus Christ. It's called ASMR?
Yeah, right.
All right, so I'll go first.
Yeah, please.
How many emperors are there of an empire?
Typically 1. I feel like this is a leading question, though, Your Honor.
Yeah, it is obviously.
Objection leading the witness.
Objection sustained. Okay, so I was thinking about the idea of the numerical, the first, second, third, whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, working through that process, I was thinking about the title of emperor and like, what if you had first emperor, second emperor, third emperor? And I was like, oh, that could be fun. And then I was like,
cool.
And then I was like, what if you had emperors, but none of them had the number, but you had multiple emperors for the same empire, and they all shared the same rank, but they all had slightly different titles. But people didn't really understand the hierarchy of it. So then I was thinking about like, what if you had, and this is not a great example, but just like you have Emperor Red, Emperor Blue, Emperor Green. Like you have terms that are clearly like of the similar thing, but they aren't necessarily better or worse than each other. You have you could just have Emperor Name. Whatever it is, but having all these people who are like a council, like an oligarchic system, but they don't rule jointly. They all rule like
that's interesting.
They rule. I was trying to think about how to structure this, and because with the title, with the rank, it's like we come up with the rank, we come up with the title, and then it's kind of like, well, why does that exist? That's part of what this episode has to be, because we can't just say, here's a title, end of podcast. That's not particularly interesting. So I was thinking that
that's not how our D20 episodes work at all.
Hey, we have to talk about those for like 10 minutes. But anyway, so the say you have 8 emperors.
Okay.
And they each have like jurisdiction over certain things or whatever, but they all kind of they swear some sort of oath, some sort of blood oath to become an emperor.
Okay.
Where they can't betray each other and they can't betray the empire. They are all now bought in. and they are all like and not in a hive mind way, but in a way where they cannot act with ill intent towards anybody else.
Sure.
And they must like rule their own like province or their own
domain,
their domain, which might be like, you are the emperor of industry and whatever,
vice president of microwaves and East Coast programming.
Yeah. But
I'm not trying to be funny. It sounds like you're effectively recreating a corporate structure.
Kind of, except for then they would rotate around.
Ah, okay. Interesting.
So then, because you are supposed to be this like impure, and it's mostly it's just like a workload.
Yeah.
There are too many, like this empire is big. It can't be ruled by one emperor.
Yeah.
And one emperor is too much of a liability. So you want more emperors, but you want them to all be of one, like a high enough title and high enough rank that they could like
their authority is unquestioned.
There isn't somebody above them who is singular. Like you don't want one head of the snake. You want a hydra. So they've created one that there are multiple emperors who all get to make sure that they can pick up the slack if somebody is failing or is now losing, they're becoming senile, they are sick, whatever, that there are other emperors right there, and they find a new emperor to come into that place who takes the title and equal rank, and the seniority is not really a problem. Is
there a tiebreaker role in case there is gridlock?
They don't need a tiebreaker. They have the blood oath. It's like put them in because they also...
So it's a magically binding oath.
Yes.
Got it.
And they are not jointly ruling on stuff. Remember that. Like they are doing it independently of each other, and then they kind of come back together. But they all are still, and I think it just works. And it was like, I think it'd be fun if they were maybe each is emperor and then a name, but it's not their name. It's the name of the first emperor ever that took that. That was like it.
I like that.
So it's like the first 8 emperors. Those are the slots.
Yeah.
And you take whichever emperor slot is available.
Yeah.
And that's your name.
Yeah.
For the rest of your life.
Yeah. That I like a lot.
Yeah. So then you have
that is that.
So you have Emperor Julius, Emperor Augustus, Emperor Nero, Emperor Marcus Aurelius, so on and so forth. And then and you take the slot and you say, I am now Emperor Nero. Sucks to be you, and you are Emperor Nero for the rest of your life. And so people only need to know these 8 emperors exist, and they don't need to remember their names, and they don't necessarily know if an emperor dies and is replaced. That is not necessarily in their face. That could be happening, in a quiet room in the dark. The continuity of this empire is important, and it works really well for something like a sci-fi galactic empire.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think I'm partly inspired by like how cool Foundation on Apple TV did the empire, or the emperor thing with they have the 3 emperors that are all clone of themselves, and I think I know the books it's just 3 emperors.
Sure.
But the idea that just playing around with that idea, and then making it more.
I think that's really interesting. I think my favorite part of it, number one, the blood oath, it all hinges on the magically binding blood oath.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's just an oligarchy.
Infighting, yeah.
Yeah.
But that is interesting. Also, titles, sort of like we were talking about earlier, a lot of it is vibes.
Yeah.
And the idea of having multiple emperors is good, just vibes.
Yeah.
I have no other word for it, but to have like Emperor Octavian and Emperor Nero lead the charge into war, like that's interesting.
Excuse me, I believe he abandoned the name Octavian when he became emperor.
I don't care. Octavian sounds cool. We just said vibes.
I don't actually know if that's true or not, but I think he did though. But anyway, so I think the keeping of the names really adds something to the vibes, because then it becomes it adds a level of intensity and it's how people who are president always say, people besides one person who are the president will say, like, I have to respect this office. I need to be called Mr. President. I need to be reminded that I am serving a duty as this title, as this rank within our country.
Yeah.
Don't call me by my name, because that takes me out of the reality that I am making this decision not as Barack Obama and
Right.
make a decision as the president of the United States.
Would it be similar then to, because when we have, there's a word for it, but when you get a formal name as a title, like popes do this, they change their names.
Yeah,
Would you then be
maybe. Yeah,
Emperor Nero the 15th?
maybe. Yeah,
And just indicating, because that could be really interesting if you had, let's say you did that and you had Emperor, you had Emperor Caesar the 15th, Emperor
Julius wouldn't be. Caesar was the title.
I'm going to re-listen to our Assassins episode and kill you.
I'm just saying, I'm a millennial white man.
I'm
Rome
making
matters
it up.
to me.
I'm making it up.
I'm not.
I am. We're making this up.
This is
Vibes,
real.
Guy.
This is so fucking real right
The
now.
game is over. I will kill you for real. But you have Emperor Nero the 15th. You have Emperor Augustus the 18th. But then what if you had Emperor Octavian the 3rd? And suddenly there's like, the gap. Why have there been so many more Neros than Octavians?
And why were there an Octavian and an Augustus? Who knows?
Kyle, I swear to God.
No, but your point is well taken. I think that's interesting. I think it'd be kind of cool if it becomes one of the emperors was added late.
Yeah.
That there was an expansion of the bench. You know, like there's maybe a slight stigma with those emperors for a little while, where it's, oh well, these are the OG emperors. These are the original states. These are the original things.
The 13.
Like these original colonies. Who cares about Ohio? Like you were added late. Like what does it matter? You're not one of the OGs. Not that matters anymore. Right? But like at first, like there's probably like a bit of a like, oh, but you're not one of us.
Right.
And you're one of the new emperors. And then like for
You
like,
haven't been here the whole time.
no, unlike Samurai. So then like you get added, you add in a couple more over time, and then you're like, now you're 8. You are Emperor Nero the 24th, and you are Emperor Hadrian the
5th.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, so
Something's there.
something's there, and like that history in and of it, like that's such a good little bit that is so subtle that would be great world building in a story where it's just where like you as the reader might just go, huh. What's
up with that?
What's that number difference for?
Right.
And then it's a pretty easy thing to realize. Maybe that's just a new emperor, or you might assume, like with the popes, that they choose their name.
Yeah.
And people have just chose the name Nero a lot, and it's like no, that emperor is always Emperor Nero.
And that's the fun part, is that because it draws on a real world paradigm or template, it brings you just to the point of because it uses real world language and real world sort of like analogs, it brings you just to the point of teetering on the abyss of imagination.
Yeah. If you're too absurd, people can't really find grounding in it, and you're like, I don't know, I'm a little bit lost. Versus like, oh, I know this word. I can now I can kind of place myself a little bit better, and I can grasp the world building more easily. So like people like make up words for titles. It's rough. Yeah. If you combine words for titles, that can work, and you can make up words for titles at like a small scale.
Yes.
Like you have a local village chief, and you make up a word for that. All cool.
Yeah.
Like that's
head chief.
No, I mean like making up like a word, like
oh, I see what you're saying. Or like, what was it in
Visalia,
Wheel
or something.
Wheel of Time? It's he's like the Karakarn, like chief of chiefs.
Yeah, and like
King of Kings or whatever it is.
That's Jesus.
That's also Randall Thor.
Is it?
I think that's one of his titles in the book.
Isn't Jesus King of Kings?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
But also so is Agamemnon. So.
Hey, and I've been to his tomb. It's pretty dope. It's really not dope. It's just still there.
It's a tomb.
Yeah. Anyway, but the keeping it somewhat grounded works.
That actually is a perfect segue into mine, which is why I said you know it when you hear it.
Yeah.
Because as much as I get frustrated sometimes by the overuse of Latin and or Greek terminology to elucidate something eldritch or ancient or arcane or magical, it's overdone, but also sometimes it works because of that exact reason, because you can immediately go, okay, I got it. I understand. I'm located in the world. And so for mine, in this world, there are let's say 9 schools of magic, right?
Okay.
This is ranking for a magician's order, or a wizardly order. When you start off, you are mastering 1 school of magic.
Okay. And then
You are Soul Arcanist.
okay.
Then you move on to 2, and you are Duarcanist or Dwarcanist.
Okay. So we're just gonna go through the
Triarcanist, Tetrarcanist, Pentarcanist, Hexarcanist, Septarcanist, Octarcanist, and then finally the chief, the high mage, is Novarcanist, and that's the title, and that's it.
All right, lightning round.
But I'm saying,
I think that's really fucking good. I think it partway through it, I was like, this feels just like it's just Harry Potter. What year are you? I'm a 5th year,
Right.
But then it's when you get to Novarcanist that it delivers, where you're like, that's the closing blow.
right, and there is 1.
Yeah. Well, should there be one?
I don't. In my mind, there had been 1, or there are maybe few, but I think that'll depend on the political structure. Do you want it to be like Harry Potter, a head of school, or do you want it to be a high council of Novarcanists?
Or because is it about your rank within the order, or is it about your rank over magic?
I think it's, in my mind, it had been both.
Here's my pitch.
Okay.
There is no defined number of any of these. It is simply how many people can master all the magics, because mastering all 9 is really hard. So you might have 1 Novarcanist. You might have none for a little bit.
Yeah.
Or you might have 4.
Interesting.
You might have 12. Right. It just depends on how many within a period of time have been able to attain that rank. And you might, and then
So there's no set number. It might have been maybe just tradition that because it's so difficult, there's only ever been 1, but then suddenly a second, which is perfectly allowed and has always been perfectly allowed, shows up.
Yes. And then it is up to them to decide on a power sharing agreement.
That's interesting.
Because everybody just knows. And maybe because like if the point of this place is to teach people, like if it is truly a wizard school, if we're going with, like if we lean into the Harry Potter element,
right,
then it doesn't really matter because they're just trying to teach.
Right.
They're trying to like help these other like mages learn how to use magic so that having more at Novarcanist rank is helpful. If they're an order who is like doing more like,
if they're a military order,
they're doing like more esoteric shit out in the world, and I don't know, then maybe having
planar protectors,
then maybe having like a bit more of a hierarchy like within the Novarcanist makes more sense. But it just depends on how you deliver them to the world.
And I think it's flexible around that. And I also like that because there's, yes, being Novarcanist and mastering all 9 schools of magic is incredibly hard and speaks to your strength and capacity as a magic user. But a Soul Arcanist who has spent their entire life focusing on a single school of magic or a single element or something could still be incredibly powerful. It's not to say that one is immediately more powerful than the other.
Right? Okay, so that's interesting. So
it's sort of like I was thinking about it a bit like chefs, where it's like, you know, in for sushi chefs, you know, you spend 30 years, or I'm being dramatic here, I don't actually know, but you will spend a very long time just making rice before you even move on to cutting fish.
Yeah. And like a pastry chef is, they do one thing, but that thing is really fucking important.
Yeah.
And beloved, but like they can't do what a regular like an executive chef can do, and executive chef can't do what they do.
Right.
But within the hierarchy, executive chef is higher.
Right.
And how does that, like, so like, you know, if you are was it Unarcanist? What was it?
Soul Arcanist.
Soul Arcanist, because Unarcanist I think would technically be it, right? I don't know.
It would be. I played around. They're different. I
Soul
picked
Arcanist,
because mostly because I like Tetrarcanist more than Quaterarcanist.
Yeah,
so
fair enough.
That's when I started blending Latin and Greek.
So if you're Soul Arcanist and you are an evoker, you know, for instance, using the D&D magic, then you are the master of evocation magic, and that's all you care about. You are a fucking artillery gun.
Absolutely.
And people are terrified of you.
Absolutely.
But then if you're Pentarcanist and you can do 5 quite well.
Yeah. And maybe see interactions and have insights into evocation magic that a Soul Arcanist doesn't.
Yeah. Okay, so here's here's the pushback then. They aren't ranks, they're just titles.
I think
they
maybe
can't be ranked.
Now I'm starting to get to the point where they like it's basically Novarcan. There is prestige to it because it's the sheer number like you said, the extreme difficulty that it takes, but it's not to immediately say that a Nova Arcanist is the high archmage.
Well, and I think there's something really interesting in here, and that the prestige question is, I think, the most prestigious thing. It's a bell curve.
Yeah.
The people at the ends
Yes.
have more, like, because if you're a Soul Arcanist who's truly the most powerful at what they do, you have a lot of prestige.
Right.
If you're Nova Arcanist, you have a lot of prestige. If you are a Pent Arcanist, people are like, yeah, whatever.
You didn't have enough discipline to
Perfect one, and you're not all the way to perfecting all of them.
Right.
So then
you can only manage
and
5.
it plays with the interesting nature of titles, is that rarity doesn't necessarily mean anything,
Not always, no.
because then it's the prestige of the individuals.
Yeah.
And the individuals just happen to be concentrated in these 2 titles.
Right.
And maybe, like, the Octarcanists are also quite prestigious because there's not many of them. And,
But
like,
really, it's once you get past Pentarcanist.
Yeah, or
And
like-
once you start getting into Hex and Septarcanist, then it
starts to change.
It starts getting different.
Yeah.
But you could and you could also create real world analogs here of an education system where it's someone who, for example, Soul Arcanist does a trade, who is a carpenter or an
a plumber
electrician or
whatever.
a plumber who does this and only this, and they are incredibly knowledgeable and valuable.
Also, they make a lot of money,
And they make a lot of money.
which is a great real world example. It's like the prestige of, like, being a master plumber is significant.
Absolutely.
Versus,
As someone who's going through construction in my apartment right now, yeah, I'm learning.
yeah, and they're really good. But then and then you have the clearly not very talented plumbers,
Right.
Who are Soul Arcanists who are meh. And then you have people like us who have lots of skills, but none of them are that great.
Not that.
We're forgettable. We're Pentarcanists.
Completely.
Like, where it's like, and a lot of most of society is in that.
Is
But
in the generalist.
To be fair, in the real world, no one actually values the Nova Arcanist. So maybe this doesn't work, because now I'm thinking about, it's like, I actually probably have 8 skills, but none of them are valuable. Like,
Right.
But no one cares if you have 8 skills. Everyone's like, you have 1 skill that's perfect. Great, we want you. Otherwise, because we divided labor too much. I wrote a paper once on Karl Marx and about how the best thing he was saying was about the division of labor, and how that was what we used to, like, that conquered the workforce, because then people had fewer skills and they could do less on their own, and they needed the other.
I would actually like to hear that theory. That sounds interesting.
I can send you the paper.
Yeah, please do.
I don't know there's much more to say on this one. I feel
No,
like
it's very clear. The only thing that I would ask you, though, is I was torn. I decided on, like, Arcanist as the suffix at the end of it.
Okay.
But the other one that I was thinking about was the suffix Arian, which is believing in or practicing. So you would have Solarian, Duarian, Triarian,
Okay.
Tetrarian.
it works better when you say it like that and not when you said Aryan.
Arian?
Yeah.
Well, what am I? That's how you say it. Hyphen ARIN.
It doesn't sound great. It's
It
just the
doesn't sound
suffix.
grethink
I think Arcanist works.
Yeah,
I think because I think Nova Arcanist in particular, like Novarian, it just sounds like a person from the country of Nova,
It does. That's true.
Yeah.
Octarian sounds like an 80-year-old.
or it sounds like an emperor that you would have made up.
Emperor Octarian the Fourth.
So yeah, I think Arcanist is better.
Perfect. Bring it into lightning round. Not lightning round. Microwave round.
Lasagna round.
Lasagna. Microwave round.
Lasagna round.
Microwave round.
Microwave. Lasagna microwave. What if you made a microwave out of lasagna? I'm gonna call up Jack Donaghy.
Do it
I got
right
an
now.
idea. Okay, so mine is I don't remember where I saw this, but I wrote it in my notes once. The rank or title Sir 7, and I loved the idea of numerical titles that are just, it is Sir 5, Sir 4, Madam 1,
Yeah.
Madam 8,
Yeah.
and just with no more information provided about them. They are not actually in rank order, like much like 007, where it's just like your title, your rank is just like honorific number,
Yeah.
and no explanation is really provided. But and it is like, yeah, it is, and it is not a. It is a title that no one really understands how it's passed down. It just passes down to people, and it's like the king or whoever will pass it down to people, but the people who are getting it know why they're getting it, and no one else does. And it's just a number that isn't explained.
In the Animorphs series from the mid to late 90s, the aliens that were taking over or threatening to invade the Earth had that style, and it worked really well because the title was Visser, which I'm sure someone stole from Vizier, but it was Visser 1, Visser 2, Visser 3.
Yeah.
And those were their titles.
Yeah.
And it was incredibly like, oh, when you met Visser 2, you're like, oh my, it was very chilling.
Yeah.
It was great.
Well,
I love that.
in this case, I don't want it to be where it's like it is a rank. Like Sir 1 is the same as Sir 5. They are all...
No, and there was 2, but it
Yeah.
was more I think theirs was 2, but even still, it was more about just finding out how many Vissers there were.
Oh, yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right. Lasagna. Bing.
Bing. We've talked about before, I've made mention of this before, I love the title and the concept of a primus inter pares, which is
That's a good title.
first among equals.
Yeah.
And what it means is, so if you think of, it means legally in Latin back in the Roman court, it was the senior most representative of a group. It is the first among equals. Basically, so if you think about even on the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice does not mean that he or she has more authority than the others.
First among equals.
It is just the first among equals.
Yeah.
And so I want the title to actually be, this is the primus inter pares. There is one title, one rank. We are all equals, and it is the primus inter pares. It is the pip.
Okay.
So this is my pip.
That's cool.
Yeah. And it is just, there is no formal power given in any way, shape, or form. It is just recognition of seniority and respect. That's it.
Great. All right. What's stuck for you?
I really like how we came up with the bell curve theory for the Solar Arcanist and the Nova Arcanist.
Yeah.
I think that's really fun.
I like that.
And sort of deals well a little bit also with what I was saying before about the primus inter pares. It's like your skill hierarchy is flexible and fungible, and title doesn't always mean everything that you think it means.
Correct.
Which is why I also like what I said before about your ideas. I like the idea of there being multiple emperors, and particularly them taking on the name of the first.
Yes.
That's so much fun.
Yeah.
Because you can get at that Nero the Fourth versus Caesar the 33rd.
Yeah.
And what the hell is the difference there? That's a great world building moment that again brings you right up to teetering on that abyss of imagination. I love that.
Yeah. I think that is what stuck for me. You just kind of stole my idea. I did want to shout out because I'm remembering my favorite title when I was like, oh, what was I know there was a title I loved so much, and it was simple, but I haven't seen it anywhere else, and I looked into it to see if I could find it anywhere else, and it was in Mass Effect. It was the head of the Turian military, Primarch. And it was so simple, and Prime works really well, and then Arc is like basically the same thing
So
as Prime.
Primarch is a real title.
Is it a real title?
Yeah.
It's
It's a Roman military title, I think.
I don't know. I couldn't. Roman military titles, great. Like there's a Wikipedia article, a Wikipedia page that is basically just title and rank from different cultures, and it has like religious titles, military titles, civic titles, administrative titles, all that, and it's a fantastic resource when you're developing a title structure. But Primarch, definitely my favorite title.
I was wrong.
Yeah, I looked into this. I couldn't find it anywhere because I was like, oh, what structure is
right.
this in? Is there what title goes along with it?
Yeah, it is. Now in Primarch, fantasy, the main leader of a group. You're right. It started in 40K, it looks like. Okay. Warhammer 40K.
Okay, well, that makes sense. 40K does a lot of lore.
Yeah, it does.
40K is that kind of thing. Warhammer's that thing where I have never touched it. Nope. I'm a little uninterested in it, but it's definitely a treasure trove of lore.
Absolutely.
And world building. But yeah, I think what stuck for me, I think it is indeed, it's the emperors having the same name as the first one, because the thing that I couldn't crack was what is the name of each emperor that makes them, because that's where I was like the colors or something.
Yeah.
Where it's like there's not necessarily a difference between them. But they need to have a title that is different. And yeah, I think it's the perfect solution to that problem, and it bakes in history to the title.
Agreed.
That works. And I think any title where you can, like the Daenerys stuff is like, there's so much history steeped in every single one of those titles and those monikers, but the titles in particular, like monikers are just, they're historical accounts of what you've done in your life, but titles conveying something more than just head of country.
Right.
Does a lot. Like your titles convey, I'm really good at magic, bro. Mm-hmm. Like I have perfected all 9 schools of magic, or I have only perfected 5. there's questions asked about the history of that person
Based only on the title.
Both only in the title. And, the Supreme Commander, Allied Forces Europe. What is going on there?
Yeah.
What is Allied Forces?
What are the forces? Who are
and why
who
is
are
there
they?
Supreme Commander?
Are there other commanders?
Why does one have to be higher than the others? And you start getting into like the history of what that title means and where it came from. And I think we did a great job in both of these at getting to like defining the person.
Yeah.
And saying something about them through their title.
Yeah.
And that's what I think you should want to do with any title, unless it's really just not a focus.
And we did it very simply. And that I think is very important. Even if you look at the titles of just the I forget, there's a formal name for them, but I can't even think of how to say it.
What are you trying to say?
The titles of the house staff for the British royalty.
Oh.
Like there is a master of ravens in the British household because of the ravens in the Tower of London.
Yeah.
They have no other responsibility except to look after these birds.
Yeah.
But Master of Ravens or Master of the Ravens is a fantastic title.
Isn't that and that's a title that George R. R. Martin took and put it in Game of Thrones?
I didn't know he did that. Yeah. I believe you. I just didn't know that. But again, tells you so much about what they do. That they are in charge of the ravens. They doesn't tell you what the ravens do.
Yeah.
But you know that you're in charge of the ravens.
Anyone who's a master or minister or whatever, it's like there's always like of X says a lot, thus is a good title.
Yeah.
If it's just like, even if it's as simple as Minister of War, you're like, yeah, it's pretty straightforward, but it conveys what it conveys what you probably need to know about this character.
This could have been a cool D20 episode too if we had done like Minister of Conquest, Minister of Vengeance.
Oh, babe, you think we're not going to do that one day?
Oh yeah, we're going to do that one day.
Yeah,
hell yeah, we're going to
queue that up. Put that into the queue for our D20 episodes. All right, well, that's enough rambling. That's what stuck for us. Let us know what stuck for you. Emails in the show notes.
Thanks for listening. Goodbye.